Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Great Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Well, here it is another Wednesday, and today we have for you a very important subject. It is animals and the Bible. Okay, and animals are not treated very well in the Bible. They're pushed around, shoved around, and just treated terribly. And I just have a statement to make that I want to make for my opening statement for this video. God is cruel to animals. Now, I'm not talking about the real God, which is Goddess. I'm not talking about the real God, which is Goddess. I'm talking about the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible specifically. That's very important to know. God is cruel to animals. Usually criminals start out with cruelty to animals. And you can usually tell how advanced a civilization is by how they treat their weakest members. And what beings are weaker than animals, who do not even have a voice to advocate for themselves. We begin with 1 Samuel 15, verse 3. Through his prophet, God of the Bible orders Saul, "Now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys." Saul disobeys God by sparing King Agag alive, but spared also the best of the sheep and cattle, saving these for a sacrifice to God. Because he disobeyed and saved some animals alive, Saul lost favor with God and was replaced by David. God even sent a cruel spirit to torment Saul. So killing animals is good, but saving them alive is bad. What can I say? That's the Bible for you. What did these animals do to deserve God's wrath other than belonging to the wrong people? Many times in the Bible, God tells his people to kill women and children, cattle and sheep and donkeys, as if they had done something bad. God even kills the cattle of Egypt twice as part of his 7 plagues. He killed all the cattle, and then he killed all the firstborn of the cattle, according to Exodus 12:29. He even killed the firstborn of slaves and prisoners. So the fact that he didn't spare the firstborn of the cattle is no surprise. Of course, all of this is a fanciful story told by imaginative Israelites while sitting around the fire, so we can't possibly take it seriously. In Jeremiah 51, verses 20 through 26, God threatens innocent horses and sheep, along with their riders and shepherds. He even threatens the earth itself in a seriously insane rant. In Leviticus 26, verses 21 through 26, God threatens to send wild animals to kill innocent children and cattle. God also uses animals to commit atrocities. In Jeremiah 15, verses 1 through 4, God says, "I will send 4 kinds of destroyers against them, says the Lord. I will send the sword to kill, the dogs to drag away, the vultures to devour, and the wild animals to finish up what is left." Joshua killed a lot of men, women, children, and animals. He even crucified the King Ai by hanging him from a tree, according to Joshua 8, verses 26 through 29. According to Joshua 6, verses 20 to 21, God uses magic so the Israelites can kill everything in the city of Jericho. They completely destroyed everything in it. Men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, donkeys, everything. Leviticus gives extensive rules on burnt offerings and sacrifice. Leviticus 15 verses 29 through 30 describes how a woman can needlessly kill 2 turtle doves to resolve her uncleanness from her menstrual period before God, to keep the traders and animals extra busy. One was to be offered as a sin offering, as if the woman had sinned by bleeding, and one was just a burnt offering to please God with the sweet savor of burnt flesh. In Exodus 29 verses 15 through 25, God gives his explicit instructions for dissecting a ram, and how to offer its blood and its fat to God, how to splash Aaron and his priests with blood. Then burn the entire ram on the altar. It is a burnt offering to the Lord, a pleasing aroma, an offering made to the Lord by fire. Also, a pleasing aroma to the Lord, an offering made to the Lord by fire. So they do say that the aroma is pleasing to the Lord specifically. This is repeated throughout the Bible, such as Genesis 8 verse 21 and Leviticus 1 verses 1 through 9. Leviticus 1 verses 14 through 17 describes tearing a bird to pieces, ripping its throat out, and throwing it on the ashes, then pulling its wings so they break, and its blood being drained out on the side of the altar. Of course, all this violence is pleasing to the bloodthirsty Lord. Leviticus 3, verse 12 through 16 describes much the same thing, only this time the victim is a goat. Interestingly, it says, "The priest shall burn them on the altar as food, an offering made by fire, a pleasing aroma. All the fat is the Lord's." This makes it sound as if God is actually feeding on the burnt sacrifices. If this is so, it explains why they had to feed God pretty often. In 1 Kings 3 verse 4, it describes how Solomon went to Gibeon and offered 1,000 burnt offerings to the Lord. That's a lot of animals. In return, God grants Solomon wisdom and wealth and fame besides. At the dedication of the temple, according to 2 Chronicles 7 verse 5, King Solomon sacrificed 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats. For this, God speaks to Solomon again and tells him, if he worships him, he will establish his throne and the temple forever. But if he worships other gods, he will reject the temple and make it a place of ridicule. Of course, Solomon worships other gods. The temple is eventually destroyed and a new temple built. That one is also destroyed, but not before the establishment of the Wailing Wall to the present day. Once again, God does not keep his promises because he is fake. Most peculiar of all is the story of Balaam's donkey in Numbers 22 verses 21 through 39. In Numbers 22 verse 28, God opens the donkey's mouth, and it asks its master why its master beat it 3 times. Balaam says the donkey made a fool of him by stopping in the road, and if he had a sword, he would have killed him. The donkey asks if he had been in the habit of doing this before, and Balaam admits no. Then Balaam sees the angel and falls on his face. The angel tells Balaam that if it weren't for his donkey, he would have killed Balaam already. This story, while bizarre, suggests humans in biblical times were aware that animals have souls and hence are worthy of consideration. Jesus uses animals as analogies in some of his parables, such as how God feeds the sparrow, or be ye as bold as lions and as harmless as doves. But apart from this, Jesus has little to say about animals and their fates. But we do read about how Jesus gave a legion of demons permission to possess a flock of pigs who were driven over a cliff in Matthew 8 verses 28 through 34, or John 21 verse 6, when Jesus helps his apostles on a fishing expedition, or the time he multiplied the fish so they would feed everybody. In fact, early Christians took fish as the symbol of Christ and compared him to both a lamb and a shepherd. Jesus also compared his followers to a flock of sheep, saying, I am the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sake of his flock. But there have been certain animals that Jews refrained from eating because they are deemed unclean. Will Christians be as picky? The answer is no, according to Acts 10 verses 10 through 15, when Peter is shown a net full of unclean animals, and a voice orders Peter, kill and eat. When Peter objects, he is told, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. This paves the way for Christians to eat anything they like. In conclusion, the Bible is unkind to animals. This comes as no surprise to anyone who knows how the Bible treats non-Jews, foreigners, women, and children. Now we must ask ourselves, how will we treat animals?